Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith, and today I'm talking about Red Sonja, Consumed by Gail Simone. This is from Orbit Books. There, you can see it says Consumed. Harder to see there. Boring cover, but I think I've ranted about it enough in videos. So let's talk about the book. In a nutshell, Red Sonja has adventures in a barbaric land. I'll go more into detail shortly. But for the too long didn't watch folks, we're not even a minute in, but for the too long didn't watch folks, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I really liked it. I think when I rate books during my videos now, I may start making distinctions if necessary, because as I've said in the past, I go with the Goodreads scale, which is 1 star is I didn't like it, 2 stars it was okay, 3 stars I liked it, 4 stars I really liked it, 5 stars I loved it, which to me is different than if it were let's say 3 stars it was good, 4 stars it was really good, 5 stars it was great. Because I think you can love a book that isn't great, or not love a book that is great. And so I've come across this now. Basically, my Deliverance review, someone brought up their opinion of the book, and I do think objectively, I don't know why I'm going to go into a different book when I'm supposed to be reviewing Red Sonja, but just for my examples, objectively, Deliverance is a 5-star book. It's very well written. It's very interesting. It's, I don't know if it's considered a classic, but subjectively, I gave it 3 or 4. I can't even remember now, because it didn't blow me away. And I said that might be because I've seen the movie, so I wasn't surprised by anything. But I do think, objectively, it's a better book than my subjective opinion of it. So when necessary, I'm going to start making these distinctions. But in this particular case, I think 4 stars is appropriate in both senses of the rating. It's a very well-written book. And what we have here is Red Sonja. For those of you who don't know, sort of a creation of Robert E. Howard, creator of Conan the Barbarian, Solomon Kane, and sort of a creation of Robert E. Howard and some people from Marvel Comics, which I should look up here. I should know off the top of my head, but let's see. Roy Thomas, Barry Windsor Smith, Frank Thorne. Throw those names out there. And Robert E. Howard, because he has a character that's kind of, I don't remember if she's actually called Red Sonja or just Sonja, but it's spelled differently. But it's Marvel Comics, those creators, Roy Thomas, I believe, who made the character who she is today, or at least was. I don't know if any of this is making sense. But in Marvel Comics, Red Sonja, a contemporary of Conan the Barbarian, she may have appeared in his comic before she made her own solo appearance, but I'm not 100% sure. Fiery red hair, usually depicted in a chainmail bikini, and she had a curse because she had made a deal with her goddess that would help her survive, give her the skills she needed to survive, and so she could only bed a man who had bested her in combat. So that's the traditional Red Sonja, the one that's been around the longest, possibly the most well-known version, but that may have gone out of style. Because now Gail Simone has written the character. She is best known as a comic book writer. This is her debut novel. She's written Deadpool, Uncanny X-Men, Wonder Woman, and she has written a bunch of Red Sonja for Dynamite. And I have not read a lot of that, so I don't know whether it's within Dynamite's Red Sonja that some changes have been made, because the Red Sonja in this book is not exactly the Red Sonja I know from Marvel, in that she does not have that curse. As a matter of fact, she is quite sexually liberated in this story. And what we have, now that we're 6 minutes into the video, what we have in Red Sonja, Consumed by Gail Simone. The book starts with Red Sonja on the run after having committed theft from somebody. I'm going to try to avoid any details and spoilers, of course. But she's on the run from some people, and this is where we first meet our character. And we slowly, you can read this without knowing anything at all about Red Sonja. You're slowly going to get to know her. Meanwhile, there is a scene. This might be slightly spoilery. There's a sort of a disconnected scene all on its own that reminded me very much of a specific scene from the movie Tremors. I loved it because I love Tremors. And we meet other characters. There's this character Silas, who is a blood man for the Falcon, who is a crime lord. And it's the Falcon that had hired Red Sonja to steal this thing, but he's afraid she's gonna betray him, so he sends his blood man to make sure Sonja's gonna give up the goods. So there's a clash that's going to happen there, because I like Silas. Really interesting character. I don't want to go into too much about him, but definitely, I don't know that he's a character we see a lot in this type of sword and sorcery story. But he is I think, a nuanced character. And very, very interesting. I think a lot of the characters in this are nuanced. But we meet him. We meet this young couple that's on the run from something. And of course, this is all going to eventually everything's going to come together into the big climax of the book. And so it's Red Sonja on the run, traveling on the road, sort of drifting here and there, making sure the people that are after her aren't too close behind. But as she thinks several times, she doesn't think about the past, she doesn't think about the future, she just sort of lives for the day. And everything's gonna coalesce. Gail Simone's writing, very good. It's very clear. It gives the feel of this type of pulp written back in the day when Robert E. Howard was writing this sort of thing, without getting bogged down in some of the language and style that Robert E. Howard and his contemporaries could sometimes get bogged down in. A lot of those stories, they were being paid by the word, by the pulp magazines, and so they'd try to pack as much as they could, so the writing could get a little dense sometimes, and I don't think we have that problem here. But one of the things that I really like about this is that at the beginning of each chapter, and we do our POV, bops around a little bit. Sometimes it's Sonja, sometimes it's Silas, sometimes it's another character. But before each chapter, no matter whose POV it is, we have these bits of history. But they are generally excerpts from history books. So they're not just this sort of dry history. So at the beginning of chapter 1, we have some stuff, and then it's Palacius III, the Song of Sonja, the She-Devil. That's the source of what we've just read. And then, let me just skip ahead, chapter 2, we have some history, and is Sir Phallius of Leone, the making and unmaking of the steps. And then, just for a little bit more, chapter 3, we have this history, bit of history, and it is from Caliphus Herad. I don't know how you would pronounce that. Heroes and Legends of the East. So, and then sometimes it's verses from an ancient song. A lot of them anonymous. There's even a bit from a play. But it fills in what historians believed about Red Sonja, as well as the history of the land in which she lives. And I really enjoy that. It's an interesting way to world build without bogging the story down, because you just have these little bits at the beginning of each chapter. And as far as Sonja's history, a lot of that comes to us from her dreams. Because of what's going on in the story, it's affecting her subconscious. So the few times that she's able to get some sleep, she's dreaming about her past. And so again, it's integrating this information within the story without bogging down the story, although some people would say it does bog it down. I know people who do not like dream sequences within stories because they consider them filler or an excuse for a jump scare. And I would say that for me, it all depends on the execution. Sometimes they do very much feel like filler. But I think in this case, it works because it's giving us this background that needs to be, I suppose it doesn't need to be, but it helps. It fleshes out the character. And so I didn't mind that we're getting these dreams that are telling us about Sonja's past. And as I said, it's different from the comics, the Red Sonja that you might know, because it does not have that curse element to it. This Red Sonja, she can sleep with anybody she wants, and she is going to sleep with people. Whereas, again, in the comics, it was she could only sleep with a man who had bested her in combat. And, of course, her curse was she's a better fighter. So, I think it was very rare that she ever got to sleep with anybody, because she was always beating them in combat. One of the few relatively recent Red Sonja comics I read was Sonjaversal, which was a multiverse story where different Sonjas from all across the multiverse were colliding, and I believe most of them had some version of that curse. But as for the regular series or mini-series of Red Sonja stories that Dynamite has been publishing, I can't say which version of the character they are using. Whether it's this version or the version with the curse. I do have 2 volumes of Red Sonja, Black, White, and Red, which is anthologies. All the artwork is only those 3 colors, black, white, and red. But I haven't read either of those yet. And it's all different writers, different artists. So possibly different interpretations of the character. I can't say. What I can say is Red Sonja Consumed by Gail Simone is an incredibly fun adventure story. We get a great mix of characters, a great slowly building story as Red Sonja moves from place to place, staying ahead of the people that are chasing her, maybe even completely losing the people that are chasing her for a while. We get these other chapters or parts of chapters that are from other people's perspectives that's slowly building this this scene, this thing that's coming, that's happening, that of course Sonja is eventually going to become involved in. And it's nicely paced, it's nicely done, it's fun to be introduced to a character if you've never read the character before and see her going through some adventures before throwing her into the big story at the end. And I really like what that big story is. It's not Tremors, but there's one scene that reminded me of Tremors, and that's part of the big story. And there are some horrifying things. One of the things with the old, like the Robert E. Howard stuff, the old Conan stories, was how much there was so much horror in a lot of those stories. Because this is a world of barbarians and magic and gods and monsters. And I haven't read a ton of the non-Robert E. Howard stuff, but I have been building that collection, so I don't know how much those might incorporate the horror elements, or if they just go straight sort of sword and sorcery. Yeah, there's a monster, but it's not as horrific as Robert E. Howard made it. But some of what goes on here definitely falls into the horror realm of this type of book. So, all of this being said, despite this boring cover, this incredibly generic cover that could be just about any fantasy novel on the shelves nowadays, Red Sonja Consumed by Gail Simone is definitely 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. Once I got going, and I had started it before the week of Thanksgiving, but then we had a bunch of people here for a week and a bunch of sickness here for a week. So I did not read anything more than a couple pages for that entire Thanksgiving week. Once everybody was gone and everybody was relatively healthy again, I jumped back into it, and once I got going, I didn't want to put it down. So I definitely recommend this for fans of that fast-paced, violent, horror-tinged sword and sorcery type of stuff. It may not be the Red Sonja you recognize from your childhood if you're an older person like me and really know her best from the Marvel Comics stuff. But definitely a Red Sonja worth reading about, and I really hope that Gail Simone writes more. I hope that there's more Red Sonja books that come out written by anybody, but I would love to see Gail Simone do more, because very, very much enjoyed what she did here. It's odd. I don't know how these things work. Titan Books has the rights to Conan the Barbarian and has been publishing a new Conan comic book, a new Savage Sword of Conan black and white comic book magazine, new Conan the Barbarian novels, and they just announced, I'm very excited, that there's going to be a Solomon Kane novel, first full-length Solomon Kane novel, because he's my favorite Robert E. Howard character. But that's all from Titan Books, and as I mentioned at the beginning, this is from Orbit. I initially, when I saw this was coming out, initially thought it was, I just assumed it was a Titan publication, but it's Orbit. Um, so it's weird because the character, again, was owned by Marvel ish because they did most of the character stuff. She's barely a Robert E. Howard character, in my opinion. Mainly a Marvel character. I would have thought she was a character that they would retain the copyright to as an original character, but maybe because of that slight tie to Robert E. Howard. I don't know how this stuff works, but all I know is Dynamite is the one publishing her now. And so I guess they have the contract with Orbit. I don't know. Anyway, Red Sonja, consumed. Gail, Simone, 4 out of 5 stars. Highly recommended. I really liked it. And that's my review. Recommendations. Let's do recommendations. And basically, go back to the Robert E. Howard. There are relatively easy to find collected editions of Robert E. Howard's stuff. I would say get the Conan. I don't know the publisher, but I think they're all still readily available. And I have the old stuff. I like the old paperbacks, the old covers. So I have a bunch of those. But Conan the Barbarian, especially the Robert E. Howard stuff. But there's new stuff coming out. James Lovegrove. And the same day that this came out, a new Conan novel from James Lovegrove came out. I don't have that one yet. But I love James Lovegrove. So I think there's 3 Conan hardcovers from Titan that are out so far. 2 more were just announced. One by Tim Levin. Very excited about that one. And then, as I said, the Solomon Kane. Is the other, I think Tim Wagner. I can't remember if he's writing the Solomon Kane or if he's writing a Conan. Either way, check out Conan the Barbarian if you're interested in this stuff. If you can find the old 80s Red Sonja paperbacks, there are 6 in the set. I have all 6. I found a nice set on eBay with beautiful covers, not boring like this. But those definitely follow the Marvel Comics version of Red Sonja. One could say they are novels based on Marvel Comics. Solomon Kane. I have a couple of small old Solomon Kane paperbacks, but just to be on the safe side, I have the big trade paperback that is the complete works, or the complete Solomon Kane by Robert E. Howard, which has every story, poem, story fragment with Solomon Kane, who is a Puritan. I love the aesthetic of the character. He's got a rapier and flintlock pistols, a cape, and the thigh-high boots, and the big giant hat, and breeches and everything. And his stories, definitely horror stories. There was a movie made, which was fine. But yeah, check out, if you're interested in this type of thing, you have to check out Conan. It seems to me you would have already read this sort of thing, but Conan, the Robert E. Howard Conan stuff. Red Sonja, the 70s stuff, if you can find it. Solomon Kane. I have another book, Robert E. Howard, that's the Swordswoman, which is the Dark Agnes saga, which is only a couple of full stories and then a couple story fragments. She's a character in France in not the barbaric times. I don't remember exactly when, but great character, right up there for me with Solomon Kane and Conan. And if we're going to get away from that a little bit, I would recommend the Victor Gischler trilogy, which I'm looking at right here, which is A Rumor of Kings, A Rage of Sabers, and The Bones of the World. I don't remember what the overall trilogy is called. I reviewed all three last year, I think. Maybe earlier this year. No, I think it was last year. Fantastic fantasy series from Victor Gischler. So yeah, that's just a ton of recommendations. And that's it. I guess question for the video, is this your kind of thing? Have you read any Conan, Red Sonja, Solomon Kane, that type of fantasy? We're not talking high fantasy. This is no Lord of the Rings, people. Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, I'll have links for my Instagram and Bluesky in the description below. And that's all I've got. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith. Until next time, read more books.